All right, we should be live. Now there's a 20-second delay. So let's do a quick sound check. Let me know 20 seconds after you get this message. You people of the past, your ways are quaint. Let me know what it's sounding like if the audio is coming through okay. And while we wait for that, then we'll enjoy this little projection show. This was our first foray into large scale projection mapping. And those of you in the chat can put where you're from, see where everybody's from and see what states we have represented or what countries. I know we had someone from Australia, but probably not live streaming because I think it's like 3 a.m. in Australia. Let's hear where you're at. Okay, I'm getting some sound goods too, so I think we're just going to go ahead and get started. A little bit about me. So my name is Jeff Baird, and I live in Utah with my wife Becky and our 3 boys. And we've been doing like an amateur haunted house in our backyard for a little over 20 years. And most of that time was with physical props. We'd make our own props mostly and animatronics using windshield wiper motors and PVC, things like that. And then we started sticking our toe in the water with projection effects. But I was a little slow to get into it because it was expensive and I didn't have the necessary skill to do projection mapping. There's a couple of OGs during that time frame though that started this, 10, 15 years ago, like Dave Bates, Matt Champney. They've been doing this. They've been doing projection mapping before projection mapping was cool. And so they were always an inspiration to see what they were doing. But we were just kind of testing the waters a little bit with small, cheap $50 projectors and small effects. And then 2020 came along and, COVID, it was a crazy year for everybody. Lots of time sitting in the house. And my nephew, Alan, is a filmmaker and he knew Adobe After Effects. And so we're like, well, maybe this is the year we just pull the trigger and try to do a large scale projection mapping on the house. And so most of 2020, he was working on this show that you see here. It took about 5 months altogether. And part of that time was because he put his own original music composition. We created a lot of our own effects. Like you'll notice on our channel here, we've got some behind the scenes. Like this is my wife, Becky, and I'm hiding behind the green screen as she's walking down the steps with the green screen to create some of the ghosts and effects. The changing portraits were all of us in the family. So 5 months of that effort, we got this show. And it was awesome. And it really helped all of us catch the bug. And so now pretty much all of us do some degree of projection mapping. The Encanto show that you saw recently, that was done by my wife. And so we're going to, for today's demo, I think we're going to try to replicate as much of this as we can in an hour's time. And my goal is to try to simplify this as much as possible. And while Adobe After Effects is massive and can take years and years and years to master, I'm hoping to get enough information out there that you can get 70% of what this show is and can do. If you get some of these basic principles and learn where the basic tools are, then you can get most of the way there. You can get some amazing shows just with knowing where a few levers and switches are. Okay, so let's get into it. And I should probably say too what we're going to cover, because projection mapping covers a lot of different aspects. So what we're going to focus on today to try to keep it to an hour is just Adobe After Effects, just the show creation. So we won't be covering hardware. There's a lot to talk about there, about picking the right projector and finding a good place for it in your yard to make sure you get the maximum coverage. We won't cover how to play the video or how to broadcast or stream the audio. We're going to focus on just building the show in Adobe After Effects. So one of the most popular ways to start with this is using some kind of a tool. Like if you go to digitalpressworks.com, he has a free tool that's popular for tracing an outline of your house. And what that will do is give you kind of a map that you can use as you're building your show. You can use this to decide where you're going to put the pictures and the videos and all the different elements. And it gives you a structure that you can put everything to. So we're also not going to cover how to create this, but for the sake of this demo, we already have our map, our outline done, and we'll be able to just dive right into After Effects. So to walk you around the tool a little bit, there are so many levers and switches and buttons and things you can do. It's so much, it can be really daunting. And for every task you do, there's probably 3 to 5 ways that you can do that same task. So I will also say that my way is not necessarily the right way. It's not necessarily the best way. Everybody kind of falls into their own preferences and their own style. But this is the way that I typically do it. If you notice something through the stream that you like to do it a little simpler, or if you have a different idea, then go ahead and put that into the chat. And I've only been doing this about a year. I wouldn't consider myself an expert in Adobe After Effects, but I'm a firm believer of sharing what I learned quickly and often, and then hopefully all of us are learning from each other, and the rising tide lifts all ships. Okay, so when you first open Adobe After Effects, let's walk you through some of the features that you're going to need to know about. The first one is going to be here in the left side. This is where you're going to import all your pictures and your videos and your audio clips. And to put something in here is very easy. It's just a matter of dragging and dropping. So if I come out here to my desktop where I have a few different maps, all you have to do is drag your pictures or your videos or your audio over into this section here, and it automatically imports it. Now, to help me keep organized, because a project like this is going to have tons and tons of pictures and videos, and so I'll try to do just some basic folders to help me keep it organized. And so to create a folder, all you have to do is right-click on the black space, and you can create a new folder. And so I like to do one for videos. I like to do one for pictures and audio. And then solids, I think, is auto-created because I didn't create that one. And then compositions, comps, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So this is where all of your assets are going to be. And so you can see some of the ones that we got here for Encanto. Raw files that we just dragged in here. And in this screen is where you're going to see the actual video as you're creating it. And down here at the bottom is the timeline. So this, you can think of this as just like if you were watching a video on YouTube, or if you're listening to music, you can move the video along with this playhead, and it works the same way. The main difference being, instead of just one video, we're going to have layers upon layers upon layers of videos and pictures that are represented instead of just playing one video file. Over here on the left, the lower left, is going to be the layers. And so I like to think of this process as a painting. With painting, you're going to do some kind of base general layers of paint and colors, and then you just layer and build and add paint on top of that, starting with kind of the generic layers, and then as you get further into the process, then you start adding the smaller details. This is going to work exactly the same way, and it's organized so that the top layer in this order is the one that's going to show up on top, and that'll make more sense kind of as we go through. You'll be able to see that in process. But all these things you see here are just different layers on top of each other, just like a painting. So we're gonna start a new project here though, and then we'll build as much of this as we can in about an hour's time, and try to cover as much as we can. So you saw me already drag in this map that I had from my desktop, the map of my house. And so that's available over here in the project folders, the project files. And what I'll do is click on that and drag it down to this icon right here. It's small, but hopefully you can see it okay. This is a composition icon. Everything in Adobe After Effects is a composition or a project. And so when I drag this down to that icon, it's going to create a new composition or a new project. And what's nice about doing it to this icon here is all that messiness with resolution, 1920 by 1080, yada, yada, yada. This way, if you just drag it into there, it will match the resolution and the dimensions of that map that you'd already drawn. So you don't have to go change it later, but that's going to just mirror exactly what the resolution is, which is kind of nice. So as soon as I do that, then we have this new tab here that matches the name of the file, and we have our very first layer as our project. A couple of other things we may want to look at the beginning of our work. If you come up here to the top and click on Composition, and I think I need to click off this for it to show. There we go. Composition settings allows you to change some of the settings about your project. So if I click on that to see what we have, we do have the resolution here. Most of the time, if you have a 1080 projector, you're going to see 1920 by 1080. We didn't know that when we created this map, so mine's a little off. In here, you can also change the duration of your project. That's how long the video is going to be at the end of your project. And as a general rule, I like to make this bigger than I think I'm going to need. And the reason for that is because whenever I add a new layer, especially a picture, it's going to automatically fill up that amount of time in the show. And so then if I go back and extend the show later and make it longer, then I have to go through and adjust all those layers. But if I just start with it as something a lot bigger than I think I'm going to need, like 10 minutes, then when I drag new things in here, it's going to auto adjust. Okay. A couple of other things in here to be aware of. So we've got the map here, got the timeline. There is a slider right here that can zoom in or out to your project. So if I go all the way to the left, you're going to see the entire length of the show. And you can zoom up deep in to see some of the smaller details. And already here, you can kind of see what I was talking about. This layer, because I drug it down before I'd set how long the show is going to be, it stops right here at the 3-minute mark. So it's an easy fix when it's just one layer. I can click on the edge of this and drag it all the way over. But if I've got like 20 of these, then that gets to be a nuisance. So early on in the project, I like to set the length of my composition to something really, really big, because then it's easier to trim it later. Cool. Okay, so we've got our map. And if we wanted to play this video, it doesn't do anything yet, but we can play this by hitting the space bar, and you'll see the playhead start to go. And you'll notice too that this green bar, with video editing, you need to render out the work. It's kind of like pre-processing the work in order for it to play. And so there's going to be two forms of that. There's going to be this kind of real-time rendering that we're doing as we're developing. And then when our project is done, we'll go through a process of rendering out the final product so that we can have just one single video file to play on our projector on our house. So this green line here is kind of showing us what stuff has already been pre-rendered in real time, which is kind of nice. And so you'll see that kind of ebbing and flowing as you're going through the development. Now, I don't have a super beefy computer, and so I run out of memory pretty quickly. So another thing that's useful if you're like me and just have kind of the bare minimum computer to get by is this little drop down here will decide how high of resolution, how high of quality you want it to do that development time rendering. So if I have it at full, everything's going to be slower. Yes, it's better quality. You can see the lines are a little more crisp, but everything's going to be slower. It's going to use more memory. And so I'll typically do my development at half or third, which you can see is not as good a quality, but it'll go smoother. I won't run out of memory, and it'll be a little faster in rendering. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And as a side note, because of this 20-second delay, it's a little hard to do much interaction. So what I'm going to do is I'll stop periodically through this, and we can do some Q&A to make sure that I explain something clearly, or if I need to elaborate on something, and then we'll do Q&A at the end of the session too. So I'm going to go for probably, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll stop and let you guys ask some questions. Okay. All right. So we've got all our pictures and videos that we've already imported in here. We have our map. Let's go ahead and start building it, and then we'll just kind of talk through other features as we go through. Oh, and one other thing that's going to be super helpful that you're probably going to want to download. There are a bunch of plugins that you can install into Adobe After Effects, different effects that you can add, different ways that can just make your life easier. And one of those that you're probably going to want to download is from videocopilot.net. They have this FX console plugin, which is really, really cool. What it does is there's a whole bunch of different effects that you can add to your pictures and your videos and your layers. And it can take some time to go through and try to find them. Like you can find them over here on the right side. You can come up here to effect and you can find some. But with this shortcut, all I have to do is click on a layer that I want to add some kind of cool effects to. And then I can do Control Space. And it's going to pop up this search bar where I can just search for the name of the effect, and it ends up being much easier. So one of the very first things, this is kind of a preference thing, but some people like doing their show on kind of this white map, or some people would prefer to do it on a black background. It looks a little bit more like what it would look like in real life. And so I'm going to introduce you to the very first effect, which is just to invert the colors. So I'm going to click on this one single layer we have and do that shortcut of Control Space. And there's tons of effects in here, but this one we're interested in is just called invert. So I'm going to type invert, hit enter, and it's going to automatically apply that cool effect. So now I have black background with the white lines as I'm going through my project. You'll notice too, though, up on the upper left that it changed what we were seeing over here. I can't see my files and folders anymore. It's showing us what effects have been added to that layer. To get back to where I was, though, all I have to do is click this X to close out the effects. And then I'm back to my project. If I want to go back to those effects, every layer, you can twirl or toggle down this little drop down, and every layer is going to have a whole bunch of different properties that you can play with. And that's also where you can find the effects that have been applied to that picture or that video. So for example, if I expand this effects one, we can see that invert thing that I just added. And I can just double click on it to bring back that effect and play with the settings a little. Okay. While we're in here, some of the other things that you can do on every level, if you click on this transform one and twirl that down, these are properties that pretty much every layer will have. And you can change these based on what you want to accomplish. So like this opacity one, I use quite a bit. The opacity is basically how transparent this picture is going to be. And what's kind of fun in After Effects is all I have to do to change this is I can click on this percentage and I can drag my mouse to the left or the right and change the setting, which is kind of cool. So we can change the transparency. That's going to be super useful if we're transitioning between scenes, so there's not an abrupt change between the two scenes. We can change the rotation of the image. So if I swirl this thing back and forth, you see the house or the image is rotating. You can change the scale, how big it is in the composition or how small it is. You can change the position, so you can move the image around. And you can change the anchor point. And the anchor point is that little crosshairs right in the middle of the composition. You can change where that is And I'll explain why later, why that might be beneficial, but you can change where that anchor point is in an image. Another thing I haven't mentioned yet that you might see is as I scroll in and out on my project, I'm just doing that with the scroll wheel of my mouse. And there's a couple of other shortcuts that we're going to learn that you can do to interact with this map. One that I use quite a bit is to suppress the H key on my keyboard. Just going to give me this little hand, and that allows me to drag and move the whole canvas around instead of moving just the layer. And then if I want to go back to the selection tool that I had before, then I can press V as in Victor, and it changes it back to the arrow. Okay. A lot to learn. So hopefully this is making sense so far. I think I'm going to start with a layer or two and introduce masking, and then we'll stop for a break and get some questions. So the very first layer that we're probably going to want, if we look at our project over here, the completed one, is probably this background right here, the kind of brownish cracked background, the texture. So I'm going to go to my pics where that was. We found that just on Google, I believe. If you Google textures, then you can find a whole bunch of different cool backgrounds that you can use. And so this cracked wall we're going to use that on all the backgrounds of our house. And so to add that to our project, I'm just going to click on the cracked wall image, and I can drag it down to my layers. Now, as I mentioned before, the order of these layers determines what's going to be on top. So if I drag these around and change them, then you can see what's on top and what's not. And we're going to want to try to map this to the house. But what's difficult is I can't see them both at the same time. And so this might be a use case where you can go back to these transformation options and make it slightly transparent so that you can see both images at the same time. And then you can see where you're placing your image. Now I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. You can see the handles here are pretty big. This is a nice big image. So I'm going to scroll out and shrink this down so that it fits the size of the house. And at this point, we've got a very simple wall that we can apply to this house, but we don't want it spilling out over the edges. We want it to be contained just on the walls of the house. And so this is where we're going to use what's called a mask. A mask is just a way for us to say, I only want this layer to show up within this space, within this shape. A bunch of different ways that you could do masks. The way that I like to do is to first make sure that I have the right layer selected. Too often I am accidentally on the wrong layer, and then I add the mask or add effects to the wrong thing. So make sure you're on the layer that you want to have the mask. So I want to make sure that this wall is showing up just on the wall portions of my house. And then a couple of ways you can get to the tool that will let you do the mask. The first way is by clicking on the pen tool right here. Or you can press the shortcut key of G, and you can see that actually when you hover it. If you press G, it's going to change my arrow to a pen. Once you have the pen, all you have to do is start clicking on the corners, and it's starting to trace out the edges of a mask, and that tracing is going to determine where this image is going to show. And as soon as you complete the shape, it automatically applies it. So now that mask or that image is only going to show within that mask. And if you want to go back and see the masks, then you can twirl on the layer, and now you have this mask option, and you can see the mask that you're creating. One of the other properties that's useful is if you want the mask to apply to the inside of the shape or the outside of the shape, and you can change that with this drop down. Usually add or subtract are the ones that I use. If I hit subtract, now it's going to mask out the stuff that's inside and just apply the layer on the outside. In this case, I want it to be add. And I want to add it to these other walls as well. So I'm going to do some quick and dirty masks there as well. Let's do one up here. I'm not worrying about being precise at this point. We're just doing a quick and dirty. That drawn here. That's a pretty ugly mask, but we're going to roll with it for now. There you go. Now that layer is pretty much done. But I'm going to get on my soapbox here. We may have a number of soapboxes. There's different ways that you can approach your show, and it's not necessarily there's a right or wrong way, but what I've found is that the one way is to treat your house as just one big projector screen. The pro with that is that that's fast and easy. The con of it is if you have, there's all these planes and angles on our house, especially if you're coming at it from an angle like we are. And so if you have like a video, if I have something traveling across the face of my house, as it's hitting all these different angles and planes, it warps it. It looks strange. It doesn't look natural. If we want to take our show to kind of the next level of awesomeness and increase the wow factor, then if we think of it less of a projector screen and more of augmented reality, that it's not us projecting something on the house, but it's the house itself. That's what's going to give it more that illusion that it's the house and make it that much cooler, in my opinion. So to do that, I'm going to back out of what I just did and do it a little bit different. It's a more time-consuming way, maybe a little more complicated way. It's going to take longer, but I think it ends up looking better in the end if we consider doing this. So I'm going to back up what I did. I'm going to back out of it. And to back out of what we did, we can do Control-Z a whole bunch of times. And Control-Z is always my best friend. It's when I make an oops. Just Control-Z my way back out of it. Okay, we're back to that original image with no masks. So if I want to change this so that it matches the planes and angles and perspective of the house, there's a couple different ways that we can do it. I'm going to show you. I'll show you the first way, and then maybe when we add the video to the garage, then I'll show you the other way. I'm going to try to do this wall by wall so that so I can just match the perspective that way. So I'm going to shrink this thing down to roughly match this garage wall. And the first way of adjusting perspective is if you come down here, you can click this checkbox under the cube. And that's going to make this a 3D object so that instead of being able to just move it in 2 dimensions of space, we can now change it in 3 dimensions, which is pretty cool. Now, if you don't see these options, this isn't really intuitive in After Effects, but if you see something different right here, come down here and click modes, and it toggles between these different options that you have. A little confusing. So if you don't see that, just click modes and it'll probably show up. So that little box, I can now change this in 3D space. And that will allow me to adjust it to match the angle of my garage. You've got 3 different handles here. You've got this green Y axis that's going to pivot it this way. You have this X axis in red. It's going to tilt it this way. And then you've got the blue Z axis that can pivot it this way. And so what I'm going to try to do with my adjusting it is you've got these lines on the garage. You've got like one along the top of the garage, you got one on the bottom. For my Y axis, I'm roughly trying to line that up so that it matches the perspective. That looks pretty good. And then with the X axis, I'm using these vertical lines as a point of reference on the garage to try to get that to where I want it. It's already looking pretty good. So I'm going to put that wall right there. I'm going to need a very similar angle for this upper portion and for this side too, though. So let let's copy and paste this layer, and then we'll just mask them all out. So I'm going to come to this image, and it's really easy to just copy and paste with a Control-C and a Control-V to get multiple copies of the same image. And when you do it from down here, it'll have all the same properties and all the same effects and transformations that you have already. So now I can drag this one up to the top part of the house to use. Click on this third one I copied and over on this part of the house. Okay, so now I've got those three. We'll do the center wall here in just a second. Now let's go ahead and mask that out so that it's showing just on the walls that I want it to. And we'll do that the same way we did before, but now it's adjusted for perspective. So I'll click on this one, press the G key on my keyboard. And again, I'm not going to worry about precision for this because it takes a little time, but I'm just going to do a quick dirty mask. There's that one. Do this upper one. I messed something up, so I'm going to do my Control-C. Oh, yep, see, I did the same thing I warned you guys against. I was on the wrong layer. I'm going to click on the right one. So let's do that again. There we go. And then this one here. I did click on this. Mask. Cool. Now, if you want to see what it's going to look like without that kind of annoying transparency look, every one of these layers also has an eyeball next to it, and you can click on that to hide layers to see how it's looking so far, which is useful. And then if you find yourself accidentally moving the wrong thing, like I want to move this layer, oh crap, I moved the house, Control-Z. You can also lock the layer down by clicking on this. And now, no matter what I do, I can't change that layer. So I don't make as many oopses. Okay, let's do the same thing on this inner wall really quick, and then I'll pause for questions. We're already 30 minutes into it, so we'll get cracking. I'm going to drag. I think I will start from scratch with this one rather than a copy paste. I'm going to grab this, drag it down here, shrink it down a bit. Click on the 3D. This one's going to be going this direction. Slight adjustment on the x-axis, and then we'll make sure I've got the right layer selected. Press G and mask it out. And while I'm finishing up this mask with the 20-second delay, go ahead and start putting any questions you have so far, anything I need to elaborate on or anything that I went too quickly in. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Then I'm also a proponent of save early, save often. Adobe crashes more times than I'd like it to, so you can do Control-S to save often, or you can come up here to File and Save As, which is pretty much like most Windows programs. All right, let's see. What questions do we have? Okay, Carrie's got a good shortcut there. Control-D will duplicate it. Let's try that right now. That's cool. So if I click on this and do Control-D, duplicating, that's cool. I like that. Much easier. Awesome. Okay, let's see what else do we got here. Yes, position. So position is a good one to talk about when opening doors and windows. Absolutely. And so hopefully I'm going to have some time to show you that too, and how to do some keyframing so that you can open up garages, open up doors and windows. We do have an effect like that in the Encanto one where the shutters open and close. All right, for the cache, I use a large and super fast USB. It has drastically improved my rendering. Now, I might have to talk to you later, Carrie, too, about that because I don't have the same rendering options that I think desktop computers have. And as soon as they upgraded to the 2022 version of Adobe, my rendering is stupid slow in that version. So I actually went back to 2021. So I might ping you after and pick your brain, see what settings I need to change. Instead of outline on the house, I've seen mappers that use mask of solid colors. Absolutely. Pros and cons. I do it that way sometimes. The main con for me is that I end up with a lot more layers because I'll have a layer for the master mask and then the layer itself. And so it ends up being just kind of a preference. It's a would you rather type of thing. It's the pro of it is then you do the mask once and then you can just apply it to multiple layers. So it's kind of if you want to draw a lot of masks, but keep this a little bit cleaner, your layers a little bit cleaner, or do you want to just do the mask once and you're okay with having some additional layers in here that might clutter things up just a little bit. Preferences. I'm probably going to do a mini tutorial on that method here in a little while so that people can see both ways and then they can pick whichever way they prefer. Any other questions? Let me scroll up a little. I missed. Okay, I think we're mostly caught up. Okay, cool. Let's keep rolling then. We're at about 10:36. I was shooting for an hour, but I created this for an hour and a half, so we have a bit of a buffer. And what to tackle next? If we're looking at this, we have the roof, we have shutters. Some of this I'm not going to do to completion because I want to make sure I'm hitting on some of the main concepts. But let's go ahead and add some vines and some flowers because then there's some cool effects that we can apply for that. So let's pretend we already have the roof and things like that finished. Let's start adding some flowers, palms. Let's see, what do we got in here? We've got some palm leaves, we got some palm trees. So let's try this one. Let's do the palm leaves. Drag that down to our project. And we're going to want this near the top because we want it on in front of the facade. This particular image has several different kinds of palm trees that we can use, but with that masking concept, then we can just get just the one that we want. So let's go with this palm tree right here. Gonna shrink it down roughly to size that we want. And maybe I'll put it right here. I think that's where we ended up putting it on our show. Put it somewhere like that. Make sure we've got that layer selected, and I don't have to be precise with the mask on this. I just need to make sure those other ones aren't showing up. So I'm just gonna do a quick and dirty mask. So we have just that one. We may want to change this for perspective, but the palm tree, it isn't super obvious if it doesn't match the perspective. But we could click on this and adjust the perspective. You'll notice something kind of funky happening here. As soon as I made it a 3D object, it disappeared. This is where we have to start thinking in three-dimensional space. It's currently in three-dimensional space. It's actually behind my facade layer, which is kind of weird. But with these handles, not only can you grab the circle part of it to pivot it, but you can click on the arrow for any of these and you can move it that direction in space. So if I move this along the Z axis, I can drag it in front of the facade. It's kind of strange, just one of those idiosyncrasies with After Effects. But I don't think we're going to notice a huge difference on the palm tree if it's adjusted for 3D. So I'm just going to leave it as flat. One of the cons of doing 3D is more rendering. It's going to take more memory, more processing. So we got a tree there, easy peasy. I want to show you another effect that's really going to add some realism and make it pop. And so if we click on that layer and do Control Space, this effect that I want to apply is a drop shadow. It's going to automatically add it, but with the default settings, it's a little hard to tell what it's doing. And so what I'm going to do right off the bat is with this drop shadow, we have these features that we can play around with. The opacity is, that transparency or how dark something is, especially because we're putting this on the house. I tend to try to exaggerate things a little on the house so that it's more obvious. Subtlety ends up getting lost pretty easily in shows. So I'm going to drag this all the way up to 100%. The other thing I'm going to look at is the shadow that we're creating here, we can change how far away it is. And as soon as I increase that, it's like, okay, now I know what the heck Jeff's talking about. I see what this effect does. It's creating a cool little shadow on our house. And so we can move it to be as far away as we think is realistic. We can change this thing for the angle of the shadow, which later on, as you add lighting, then you can adjust the shadow to match your fake artificial lighting. You can also change the softness of it. Generally, as an object gets farther away from a wall, that shadow is going to be less crisp. And so you can play with that to get the optimal softness so that it looks real. Things like that are going to make your show. It's going to add to that illusion to make it seem like it's real, more of that augmented reality thing versus just a projection screen. So, quick effect I do to a lot of my objects. That's kind of fun. Let's see. Let's do, what should we do next? I'd like to introduce keyframing. Let's do a video first, just so you can, because we've done mostly pictures so far. So let's do a video effect too, just so you see how that works. And then I'll introduce keyframing. So let's put a video on. At one point in the show, you've got them singing about their wedding day, and it starts to rain. And so this would be a super simple video effect that we can add to the entire house when they're singing about raining, having rain falling on the house itself, and we have this cool storm cloud. On the storm cloud, I could show you some keyframing too, so maybe I'll add that too. So in the video, I've got a couple different videos that I've found from Production Crate. And as a side note, where to get effects at Google and YouTube is where I get a lot of pictures and videos. I've also put some links in the description of some other places that I like. Production Crate is one of those. That's where a lot of these came from. And so you can look in the description too and see some good places to get, especially the videos. Let's find my cloud one. And I believe it's this one. Yeah, there's our little cloud. We're going to drag that one onto our project. Now, so far we've dragged everything just directly down here onto our layers. And the default is this video clip's going to start at the beginning of your entire project then if we do that. That might be what we want. It might not be. For our show, I wanted to wait for the clouds to come in till just the right moment, right when they start talking about Bruno and the clouds coming in. And so what I'll sometimes do instead is find that moment in the video where I want the sub-video to start. Then I can drag it down to my timeline instead, and it will start at that point instead of at the beginning of the project. If that makes sense. Yeah, so now we've got this video, and as I move the playhead over here, we don't have the cloud yet, but over here we do. I'm going to scroll out. We're going to shrink our little cloud down. Put it above the house. And there we go. We've got the cloud video. As I scroll through this, you can see the cloud kind of billowing around and moving. And then it abruptly disappears. So I don't like that abruptness. As much as possible, I like to try to have smooth transitions between effects. I want to show you two cool ways that we could have this be smoother transition. And this is going to introduce a concept called keyframing. Keyframing sounds complicated at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's not bad. All keyframing is that you've got all these different effects and these properties that we've talked about already. You can have those properties change over time. So if we, for example, if we wanted this to not just appear suddenly, but we wanted it to slowly appear. That slow appearing we can do with the opacity, and keyframing allows us to say when that's going to occur. It'll probably make more sense when you actually see us doing it. Okay, so what we're going to do is from this point to this point, we're going to have the cloud fade into existence instead of just popping out of nowhere. So what I'm going to do is put the playhead at the beginning point And I'm going to set this property to where I want it to be at the beginning. So at the beginning, I want the cloud not to show up. I want it to be missing. Then I'm going to click this clock icon. And that automatically creates a keyframe. And you'll see it put this little dot here. That's one of the keyframe markers. Now, if I go forward in time and say, okay, well, maybe at this point in the video, I want the cloud to be fully formed. Come back to my property and bump that up to 100% to have fully formed. And automatically, what Adobe is going to do is between those two markers, it's going to change the property slowly over that period. That way you get the cloud slowly appearing instead of abruptly. Now, how quickly do you want the cloud to appear? Depends on how close these are together. If I want it to be faster, I can scoot it closer and it's going to appear really quickly. If I want it to be slow and gradual, then I can put it farther away and it's going to take longer for it to appear. And then if I wanted to fade it out again at the end, I'll go to where I want to start that transition. Click this button to add another keyframe. Then go to the end of where I want it to be completely missing, and I can dial that back down to 0. And then it'll fade out. So we got the whole thing looks like this. The cloud fades in, stays there, does its thing, and then it fades back out. Nice and smooth, which is cool. Now you can do this with any of these properties. So what we ended up doing in our show for the cloud was instead of appearing, I'm going to turn this keyframe off. If you just click the clock again, it just gets rid of the keyframe completely and it puts it back to the way it was before. Now what we did in our show was we thought it'd be fun if the cloud was growing. And so we did that with this scaling property. At the beginning of the video, we showed how you could make this bigger or smaller. And so what we did is we made it super duper small at the beginning. Need about like that. Click the stopwatch to add the keyframing. Move the playhead and then put this back at 100% scale. Oh, I didn't want 100% scale. Undo. Let's do like that. So now our cloud rose into existence. That was kind of cool. And then we added some lightning too, which is kind of fun. Drag that down to right about there. It's such a little tiny video there, but then we have some lightning that crashes. So with something this tiny too, it's a good reminder that we can go back to this scaler here and zoom in to where you can actually do something useful with that video. There's what the lightning looks like. And we tried to time it with the music where he talked about thunder and had it strike right then. And since this one kind of has some ground effect to it too, we had it bounce around on the ground. So now you got the cloud appears, you got lightning, all sorts of fun things. Okay, 1048, we've talked about how to do facades. We've talked about how to adjust them for perspective in 3D space. We've talked about masking, and we've talked about keyframing. And the reminder with keyframing is that you can do that with almost any property or effect. If it has that little stopwatch icon, then you can change what that property does over time. So you can get creative with that. And I think it's some cool things to do. And then we also talked about a drop shadow effect. Let's pause for questions again here. Any questions while we're kind of thinking about what to do in the remaining time we have left? Let's look through the chat here. Okay, yes, you can change the name of the layer right down here. As a best practice for me to try to keep organized, because you can also rename them in here as well. I don't do this as often as much as I should, but as much as possible, I like to change the original source file first. And then that helps me keep track, especially as you get big projects that have a crazy amount of files. I'll try to change it here and then import it. But then, yes, you can rename it at any point. You can rename it in the project files here or when it's layered. Easiest way to zoom in and out is with the scroll wheel. That's what I use. You can also do it in this drop down right here if you don't have a scroll wheel. Move a dog or train from garage to right side of the house. Do you also mask out doors and windows? Yes, I do mask out the doors and windows. Let's do one of those really quick too, just to make sure we know how to do that. We have a window on here somewhere. Let's see. Candle's just the candle, but well, that'll work. We'll show you just the candle. I'll drag that down. We will make it roughly the size of the window. Put it in here. I'm deliberately having it overlap just a little so you can see the mask work. But if we put the candle in here, I can mask that out like so. And then you got the candle in the window. And that's one of the fun things. You can do tons of stuff in the windows. And like if you use something from AtmosFX, it's going to have that pesky black background that's notoriously difficult to key out and to remove the background to make it transparent. But in Windows, you don't have to worry about that, which probably brings up something I should cover. And that is some methods for turning a video to make it transparent. You know, this cloud one, the lightning one, those videos already came pre-keyed out. So they're already a transparent background. A lot of times that's not the case. You're going to have something nuts. So let's look at a couple of examples of that too. I believe I have, let me look at the videos. Parrot's already pre-keyed. Some of these I know are green screen, if I can remember which one. Toucan. Where's the rats? I think we had to key out the rats. Maybe we didn't. Okay, well, I'm going to find a green screen to show you guys how this works. Let's find one. Here we go, flying butterfly. I think I have that in here. Okay. So we've got this video, for example. You can find tons of good videos on YouTube that are free that have this green background or a blue background. If you drag those into your project, oh, I did have it up there. And then put it into your show. To see it, I'm so zoomed in, I can't see where it ended up. So I'm going to zoom back out, come back here to the beginning, and there we can see this nice butterfly with the green background. There are at least 3 different ways that you can change the background. One of the first ways that you can do it is you can do Control Space to bring up that shortcut to search for effects, and you can search for key light. These are the properties you'll see for key light. The main one is if you just grab this eyedropper and click on the green background, it's going to automatically know what to do. It's going to remove it. Let's say, though, that you had some other color background and you needed to change it. You could do Control Space, change to color. Get the eyedropper and change the green to, I mean, this probably doesn't make sense to do this, but just to show you what you can do, you could change it to something like blue. If for some reason that was easier to key out. So that's kind of a quick and dirty way of doing it. Like I mentioned, AtmosFX is not usually that easy to do it. It's kind of difficult. So elaborating on that's probably a topic for another video so that we don't take too much time on it. But that's the quickest way, is try to find something that's already transparent if possible. And if the next best is if it's got a green or a blue screen that you can easily key out, that's going to be kind of the next best thing. Is there a lightning effect? There probably is. And if there isn't one built into After Effects, I'm sure there's one that you can import. I was actually thinking about layers because there are many cracked walls, maybe name front of the house. Yeah, absolutely. Naming conventions. I do not do a good enough job with my naming conventions, and then the project gets really confusing. So yes, great idea. Easy ease. I'm not familiar with that. Oh yes, I am. I am familiar with that. You're right. Okay, I didn't recognize it at first. The easy ease will. Maybe a good example of that to show people what that is in our Baird Manor project. Except I don't remember where I put the video, so I'll just describe it for time. In the Baird Manor project, right at the beginning, we had the 13-hour clock with the minute hand clicking around the clock backwards. And it's going kind of at this regular cadence based on what we did for the keyframing. But at the end, we wanted it to just kind of slow down at the end. And so that's what that easy ease is you can kind of smooth out the edges of some of those transitions to make it a little more smooth. Can you save all your created masks to use in all your new projects? That master masking method that was mentioned, you could do it that way. You could have one project that has all the masks drawn for your house in one solid layer. And if we get time, I can show that really quick. And then you could use that same layer in a whole bunch of different projects. Totally could. Does the window stay brown? In this case, it's because the image is transparent. We could add any background we want to it. If we found a picture that we really liked, let's see if I have one that we like here, then you could put it in that window instead. It's that way just because of the transparency. On our show, we used, I think we used that one, but then we just changed the color a little bit. So like you could put this one into the window instead. Put that there, mask it out, do all that kind of stuff. Another useful thing you can do is also with just solid colors or solid layers. So far we've dealt with mostly pictures and videos, but you can also come up to layer and new, and you've got some more things you can play with, including a solid layer. So if I wanted to have a different colored background, I don't know what we'd want, maybe kind of a nice golden background, then we can choose the colors in here and click OK, and it's going to add that layer. We just have to mask it out so it shows up just in the window. I'll go ahead and do that really quick. One of the other quick ways I will do masks too is, I added that layer. I can't see anything that's going on. Sometimes it's easier just to hide the layer, make sure that layer is selected, and then do the mask. Like so. And then turn the layer back on. Now it's masked. Of course, it's in front of the candle, so I'm going to change the order a little bit. Now we've got a yellow background. So yeah, you can totally change the background to whatever you want. Can you do the video on the garage? Yeah, let's do that next, because that'll also be a good introduction to corner painting. Where do you get footages from? A whole bunch of different places. I actually do have a video. Maybe Becky could find the link to it. It's on our channel. If you Google Baird, or if you YouTube Baird Manor Effects, there's a whole video on places that I get footage from. Atmos videos are a bear. Yeah, absolutely. What's the best way to project your house during the day onto your house at night and use effects between the two? During the day, yeah, I'm not entirely sure. During the day is going to be really, really tough unless you have a ridiculously bright projector. Most of our projectors are going to be in the neighborhood of 4,000 lumens, and it's going to have to be daytime. So you go out at night, you create that's one of the benefits of having this map already drawn. You go out at night, draw the map, draw the outline of your house, but then you can work on the show during the day in After Effects. Okay, I think I'm caught up on the questions. And we're exactly an hour. I think I'm going to go another 15 minutes and cover just a couple of other things, and then we'll do some final Q&A. And maybe we need a second round of this. We didn't make quite as far as I was hoping, so maybe in a couple of weeks we'll do a round two, and we can go into even more details. You guys can let me know in the chat if that'd be something that'd be useful. So let's do our video of Encanto. I mean, that's really the main part of this whole thing, right? We want to see the Don't Talk About Bruno song, and we want to get it stuck in our heads, and we want to get it stuck in our neighbors' heads. So let's put that on there. And so most of my main event videos I put on the garage because it's a nice white canvas and it's nice and flat, not a lot of weird textures. And so in my videos, I do have the We Don't Talk About Bruno video right here. I'm going to drag that down to my layers. Shrink it down a bit. Put it over the garage. Now, the method we talked about before to adjust it to perspective was with the 3D object, which we can certainly do. We can move it around and try to get it to fit into that box. Another method that we can do, though, pros and cons to both, is what's called corner pinning. And so to get corner pinning, we'll click on our layer, Control Space, type in corner pin. And the corner pin now gives us these little circles on the edges of our video that allow us to put precisely where we want that corner to be. So this gives us kind of a little extra precision when we're adjusting for perspective. And also, from what I understand, uses less rendering. It doesn't take as much rendering juice. So I can put those circles right in the corners of the garage, and ta-da, we've got it adjusted for perspective very easily. So if that takes less rendering and it's easy peasy, why don't I do this all the time? Some of the cons are if my image, how do you describe this? With this one, the size of the image, put the little circles right at the edges of the video. Some pictures and images, that's not going to be the case. The circles are going to be way out on the edges, and that can make it a little bit trickier to line things up correctly. But usually you can deal with that. It's usually not a big deal. Probably the other reason why I avoid it sometimes is masking can behave strangely when you do corner pinning. And so this will actually be a really good introduction to pre-composition too. If I do a mask on this the way I showed you guys before, it may or may not work the way you think it would. It acted weird. It shrunk my video. What the heck? There is some complicated order of operations that goes on inside of Adobe After Effects. And so if you want to apply an effect and then start stacking effects, sometimes you don't get the result you're expecting. I'm going to come back to that point, and we're going to talk about pre-compositions for a little while, because that's one way that you can deal with this. This whole thing is a composition, right? It's a project, it's a composition, but you can also have smaller sub-compositions. That's what all these are. A pre-composition is a way of taking your layers and packaging them up into a sub-composition or a sub-project. That can be beneficial for a couple different reasons. It can help you get organized. If you just have all of your layers for like a 10-minute show that's very complicated, this is going to be insane. There's going to be tons and tons of layers. So from an organization standpoint, you can lump those together into a pre-composition, and now it helps you to stay organized. Pre-compositions are also nice because then it kind of does some pre-rendering for you. Instead of trying to render this ginormous list of layers all at the same time, it can do some of that pre-rendering and speed up things a little bit as you're trying to view what your show is going to look like. It also is a great way to mitigate the problem that we just saw with doing a mask on the corner pinning. If I do the corner pin, add that to a pre-composition, then it ends up becoming kind of its own little video file. And then I can apply the mask without having those same weird unintended consequences. And so you might notice that with many effects. If you're doing effects and then all of a sudden you add another effect and it does something funky, oftentimes a good solution is to first put it into a pre-composition and then apply that effect. And oftentimes that's going to end up working the way you originally intended it to. Pre-comp, to create a pre-comp, all you have to do, so let's say we wanted to do this storm and lightning together. Those are two logical videos that kind of fit together. We've got the cloud here and we've got the lightning here. You can use the control key to select multiple layers, and you can just right click on those layers and choose pre-compose. Give it a name, like this is our storm comp, and click this button here to move all those attributes, all those effects, everything that you did to it. You can click on that and it'll loop all that into a pre-composition. Now this still has those two separate files in there. I can double click on it and see them individually, but they're wrapped up into its own little project, into its own little composition right here. So if we go back to our video where I couldn't do the mask, let's try putting into a pre-composition instead and see how that works. Corner pinned in Kento. Now it's a pre-composition. If I do the mask now, it works. No, I didn't have it bleeding over the edges, so we don't actually see it do anything, but it didn't do that weird warping, unexpected, unintended consequence thing. So that's kind of a strange concept. I hope that made sense. In fact, let me look to the chat and see if that made some sense. Orthographic picture during the day, particularly some good chats going on in here. Yeah, so Harley talks about the order of the layers, and it's probably just true of After Effects in general that you just kind of have to play with stuff, experiment with it a little, and then over time as you experiment and as you make mistakes, then the pieces start to click and start coming together. And so I'll say too to not be afraid of messing things up and making mistakes. If we can get our ego out of the way, it's a very fast way to learn. All right, so we got a few minutes left. What have I not covered yet that I wanted to cover? I do have a little bit of an outline. Let me look at that to see if there's anything. And then because there's so much to After Effects, I think I probably will end up doing a second live stream just so we can get even more into it. We talked about facades, masks, perspective, pre-comps, keyframing. It's probably the last two things that I would try to tackle if we can is lighting and movement to move things. I could probably do a quick and dirty version of that, of movement for like a garage door and cover lighting in the little bit of time we have left. Maybe that's too ambitious. I'm gonna try to cover. So in a lot of shows that you'll see, including some of ours, you'll have a garage door open or you'll have a window open, something like that. So let me show you kind of a quick and dirty way of having a garage door open. Now, let's see if I can actually find a garage door quickly, so I'm not taking too much time. Got so many files. I think I have a garage door in here. Thought I did. This is also why I preloaded. Oh, here we go. Here's a garage door. Why I preloaded so many things, so I didn't have to go looking for them while we're live streaming. Okay, let's do this as quick as we can while still not making it too confusing. Put the garage there. And put it roughly where the garage should go. it's got all this extra stuff in there. So we're going to do a quick mask out. So we have just the garage door. And let's put it here. Like that. I'm not going to worry about being super precise here. We're just going to put it roughly where the garage goes. Okay, now we got a rough garage. Now, if I want to have that move, we can toggle back down to these transformation properties, and it's the position that's going to move it in different directions. We can move it in all these different accesses. So if it's so if we want to move it up and down and have the garage door open that way, this is probably the one we're going to want to play with. So let's say at this point in the video, we want to have the garage door open. We'll click the keyframe at this starting point, move the playhead a little bit, and then move the garage door up. And now the garage is moving, just like that. Now, of course, it's showing up here, which is really obnoxious, but that can quickly be fixed with the precomposition thing we just talked about. And by adding a mask. There we go. Now the garage door shows up only within that mask, and we have it opening up, opening and closing. So that's a quick and ugly dirty version of it, but you get the idea. Okay, so let's do also a quick introduction to lighting. Lighting makes a huge difference too on how the show's going to look. Mostly this whole texture and the wall are about the same color, same hues and shadows and things like that. So with lights, to make lights happen, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything that we've done so far, all these layers, and I'm going to put it into one big precomposition lighting example. Everything's in that composition. In order for lighting to work, I also need to make it 3D. So I'm going to click on this 3D object. I'm going to come up to Layer and New. And we're going to add the light effect. You can choose what color the light is. Usually I just use white. Click OK. And now you've got this kind of new thing going here. You've got a cone of light that's shining on the house. You have these controls. Yeah, warning, that's okay. You got these controls similar to what you have in the other 3D space. So if I change this axis, I'm changing where the light is shining. I change this one, I'm moving it around this way. This little anchor point here too, you can change the point of reference where the light is pointing at. So this has, oh, and then I should show you some of the properties on that too. So let's expand the spotlight, light options. You can adjust the angle of the cone. You can adjust the edge to have a really sharp, crisp edge on your light or highly feathered edge. You can change the intensity of the light. Those are the main ones I use. So the uses for this are endless, but what you can do is use it as a tool to highlight certain areas of your show, to draw attention to it and to add some realism to it. So if we don't have a whole lot going on our house yet, but let's start out with just regular intensity for this light. And I'm going to do a really wide angle, and I want it to kind of cover the whole house. I'm going to do this first one with the intent of getting just kind of this overall high level coverage for the light. And then I'm going to add some specific ones to different scenes. I'm going to use my new trick that I just learned with the Control D to duplicate that. Oh, maybe it doesn't work with both lights. That's a bummer. Oh, it does work. Cool. Okay, cool. Duplicate my spotlight. This one, I'm going to move over to our palm tree to make it cast a shadow. Let's bring that over here. adjust this cone. It takes some messing around with the settings. I'm not going to be too picky with it, just so we can keep this rolling. Oops. So that way I've got my artificial shadow on that palm tree, and I can add an artificial light that is casting that artificial shadow. Like that. These are the little details that really make your show pop and really add some realism to it. So you can play around with that. For this show, I would probably do a spotlight there. I'd probably do one on each window. I'd probably do one on the garage, on the door, front door, and probably on this blank space, as well as smaller ones on any, if you have a light like the candle, we have the candle that's in there, you could add an artificial light on the candle to give some glow to it. Or if I had some lanterns hanging, then you can have those even pointing in the direction that the light would, adding to some realism. So something else to play with. I know that was a bit rushed at the end. So we're got about 15 minutes left to this schedule. I think I will do a part 2. There's a lot of other things that we could get to, but I think we covered a lot of the basics. You can do a wicked cool show just with these basic principles that we've covered today. And so maybe what we can do is you guys can play around with this, and you can feel free to let me know what other areas we should elaborate on or spend more time on, and then we could introduce some other features in a part 2. And so then in the meantime, if there's any other questions, we've got a few minutes left. I'll wait for the 20-second delay and watch the chat here and see if there's any other questions. And in terms of other content we're going to do on the channel too, while I'm waiting for that, I already do the mini tutorials. So those are intended to be kind of a quick reference of like, shoot, I don't remember how he did this particular effect. Then you can just go find the mini tutorial on it. I'm going to do a bunch of those still this year, including one on that master mask thing that was mentioned. So you can see an alternative way of doing masks than what was shown here. And so you'll see a bunch of those coming out here in a little while. And I'd like to do something with Davinci Resolve too. You know, I've got content on Luxido. I've got a lot of content on Adobe. Davinci Resolve, one of the big benefits of that tool is it's free. And so I'm just barely learning how to do it. I took a course on Davinci Resolve, but I haven't actually tried anything with it yet. And so I'll probably do some videos on that too, some Davinci Resolve videos. Other things to know, there in the description, I put a bunch of links that you might find useful too. And if you have questions after, then feel free to DM me, reach out. And I'm not seeing any questions coming in, so I think we're probably in a good place. I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. And then we'll plan a part 2. I said in a couple of weeks, but I'm going to be out of town, so we'll see. I'll try to do it as soon as I can. And then I'm also going to the Trans World Halloween Christmas Expo in March. I'm doing some presentations there, so I'll have to do some prep work for that, but I'll try to find some time for us to do a part 2. So hope that was interesting and helpful. And hopefully it demystified it a little bit. It's so overwhelming with so many levers and features and effects and buttons and switches that hopefully this made it seem a little more doable for everybody. Oh yes, multiple projectors. Someone mentioned multiple projectors for sure. I've got 2 or 3 different ways I'm going to try this year, and I'm going to do videos on that too. So stay tuned for that. We're going to try to find a simple way to do multiple projectors. Moving across the house like a witch, sanifying. Would you just put it over all the layers, or will that have them? Yeah, usually you can just put that on the top. And that's something we could totally demonstrate next time too, how to do something across the entire house. But yeah, you can usually just put it on top. Come to Florida. I'd love to come to Florida, especially right now because Utah, it's cold and I'm done with the cold. So if I could find an excuse or a way to pay to come out to Florida, yeah, I'm there. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We'll wrap this up until next time. Everybody have a good day and good weekend, and stay healthy and safe.